In every dark corner of the world, ghost stories have long been passed down through generations. Some of these stories are filled with monsters or malevolent spirits, while others hold more melancholic tone. Stories of lost love, tragic endings, and souls who could not find peace. One such haunting figure that has emerged in countless cultures and legends is the figure known as the Woman in White. A mysterious, sorrowful figure clad in a white gown, often seen wandering in the darkness, her heart heavy with grief. Her haunting presence is frequently a warning, a sign that something terrible is about to happen. The Woman in White story is one of heartache, loss, and the inability to let go of a past that refuses to be forgotten. The figure of the Woman in White is not exclusive to one particular culture, and many countries across the world have their own version of this tragic apparition. From the misty mountains of Mexico to the ghostly roads of Ireland, the Woman in White appears in folklore, her story intertwined with themes of grief, lost love, betrayal, and death. In many Latin American cultures, she is known as La Llorona, or the Weeping Woman. This spectral figure is said to roam the rivers and lakes, searching for her lost children. According to the legend, La Llorona drowned her children in a fit of rage or despair, and now spends eternity weeping as she searches for their lost souls. Her anguish cries echo across the water, warning those who hear them that death is near. In European countries like Ireland and Scotland, the Woman in White is often associated with tragic love stories. In these tales, the figure of the Woman in White is often a young bride who died before her wedding or a woman who lost her lover to untimely death. The stories tell of her restless wandering, eternally searching for her lost love, or attempting to prevent the same heartbreak from occurring to others. In the United States, there are numerous sightings of a woman in white. From the roadways of remote country lanes to abandoned houses, she has been seen by drivers, passengers, and residents alike. In some stories, the Woman in White appears as a warning of impending danger, while in others, she is believed to be the soul of someone wronged, cursed to wander in an eternal search for justice. Despite the variations in the details, there is a common thread in all these stories. The Woman in White is a tragic figure, bound by an unfulfilled desire, a loss that she cannot escape. And in the quietest of nights, when the moon is high and the winds whisper secrets, she roams, seeking, weeping, and forever reminding us of the power of lost love. There are many versions of the Woman in White, but perhaps none so chilling as the one that took place in the cold, foggy town of Marlborough, New England, during the early 19th century. It was a time when superstitions ran high, and the townspeople had learned to fear the night. They had heard whispers of a woman in white, and some swore that she haunted the very town they called home. Margaret Elwood was born to a respectable family in the town of Marlborough, a small but prosperous community. She was a quiet young woman, gentle in nature and kind-hearted, with a beauty that captivated all who saw her. Margaret had everything a young woman could want: family, health, wealth, and most importantly, a man who loved her. His name was William Hawthorne, a charming and ambitious man who had earned the love of Margaret's heart. The two were engaged to be married, and their wedding day was drawing near. The town was abuzz with excitement, the couple's upcoming nuptials seen as a union of two of the most respected families in the area. But as often happens in these stories, happiness did not last. The night before their wedding, William went missing. Margaret woke up the morning of what was to be her wedding day with an unsettled feeling in her chest. Her excitement for the day ahead quickly turned to anxiety when she could not find William. She went to his house and searched the town, calling his name, asking the townsfolk, but no one had seen him. The groom-to-be was nowhere to be found. Panic began to rise within her, and the atmosphere in Marlborough darkened. As the days passed, the townspeople began to murmur. Had something happened to William? Was it possible he had simply run away from the wedding? Or had something more sinister occurred? Soon, a search party was organized, scouring the surrounding woods and fields. It was 3 days later that William's body was discovered, floating in the nearby river, his clothes torn, his face frozen in a grimace. He had clearly drowned, but the cause of his death was a mystery. There were no signs of struggle, no indication of foul play, yet something about his death seemed wrong. Margaret was devastated. She could not understand how her beloved William could have drowned so suddenly, so violently, just before their wedding. Her grief quickly turned to anger and confusion. She would never marry him. Their love was never meant to be. As the days passed, Margaret withdrew from the world, consumed by sorrow. She couldn't shake the image of William's cold, lifeless body, the cruel irony of it all. She became obsessed, feeling as though someone was calling her. On the anniversary of William's death, something strange began to happen. Margaret, now living alone in her family's home, would often hear the sound of soft footsteps echoing in the hallway, or a knock on the door that would turn out to be nothing. It began with small, seemingly harmless occurrences, but as the days wore on, the sounds grew louder, more distinct. One night, while Margaret was gazing out her window at the moonlit landscape, she saw something in the distance, a figure dressed in white, walking slowly across the field that bordered her home. At first, she thought it was just the fog playing tricks on her. But then, the figure came closer, and Margaret saw the unmistakable shape of a woman. The woman in white. From that night forward, Margaret would hear the woman in white's whispers every night. The figure would appear at the same time, drifting past her window, gliding through the halls of her home. She never spoke more than a few words, cryptic warnings, tales of betrayal and sorrow. Sometimes, she would disappear before Margaret could even react. Other times, she would stay, gazing at Margaret with her hollow eyes, her presence heavy with an ancient sadness. Finally, they reached the riverbank, the very place where William had drowned. It was then that Margaret heard the soft whisper, just at the edge of her hearing, your love is lost." Margaret Elwood, broken by guilt and despair, disappeared into the shadows of her own home, unable to escape the sorrow that gripped her. And still, to this day, on moonlit nights, the figure of the woman in white is said to wander the outskirts of Marlborough, her footsteps soft and haunting, as she seeks those who would be foolish enough to ignore her warning. For in the end, the woman in white's message remains clear. Love, once lost, cannot be reclaimed, and the guilt of betrayal will forever haunt the soul. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment below with your thoughts. Don't forget to share this chilling tale with your friends, because some stories are best shared in the dark. There's a special kind of horror that comes with old houses, an unsettling atmosphere that seems to hang in the air, thick and heavy, like the walls themselves are holding their breath. Perhaps it's the shadows that seem to move when no one is looking, or the strange, inexplicable sounds that echo through empty rooms. But there's one haunting that stands apart from all others, the haunting of the ghostly child. Many houses, especially the old ones, are said to be haunted by a ghostly child. Some of these spirits are mischievous, playing tricks on the living. Others are more tragic, mourning their untimely death, their youthful innocence forever trapped between worlds. The ghostly child is one of the most common and most unsettling hauntings. It's a story as old as time itself, and it can happen anywhere. Why do so many people hear the sounds of children playing in these old houses? Footsteps on creaky floors, faint laughter, the sound of tiny hands tapping on windows, but when they go to investigate, the house is silent, empty. Yet they know they heard something. A child, perhaps. But who? And why? It's been said that every old house has its stories, its secrets. The Grand House on Hillcrest Lane, for example, was no exception. Built in the late 1800s by an ambitious family looking to make their mark on the world, it was a place of wealth and grandeur. But no one could have predicted that the house's future would be so dark, so haunted. Shortly after the house was completed, the family moved in, a father, a mother, and their only child, a little girl named Eleanor. She was the joy of the household, bright-eyed, full of energy, and loved by all who met her. The family had high hopes for their new home, but those hopes quickly faded as strange things began to happen. It started with the sounds, the soft patter of small feet running up and down the grand staircase, the giggling that echoed late at night when the house was supposed to be silent. At first, it was dismissed as the normal sounds of an old house settling, or perhaps the imagination of the lonely child. But soon, it became impossible to ignore. The noises grew louder, more distinct, and more frequent. Eleanor's parents began to worry. One evening, Eleanor's father, Mr. Gray, decided to confront the noise head-on. He climbed up to the attic, where the sounds of footsteps were most often heard. He found nothing, just dust-covered boxes, forgotten furniture, and the old rocking chair in the corner, swaying ever so slightly, as if someone had just been sitting in it. He told himself it was just his imagination playing tricks on him. But deep down, he knew there was something wrong with that house. Eleanor's laughter at night became more unsettling. It wasn't the sound of a child enjoying herself. It was the sound of something wrong, something lost. Then came the fateful night. A storm unlike any other raged outside the walls of the mansion. Eleanor had been playing in the garden when the weather turned. Her parents, frantic with worry, called for her to come inside. But by the time they reached the door, Eleanor had already run ahead. The lightning was blinding, and the winds were howling, making it nearly impossible to hear. They searched the garden, the grounds, calling her name, but she was nowhere to be found. Hours passed, and just as the storm began to subside, they found her. Eleanor was lying at the bottom of the steep stone steps, her small body cold and lifeless. The doctor said it was an accident, a fall caused by the storm. But her parents knew, deep down, that something more sinister had occurred. Something was wrong with that house. Her death was ruled an accident, but from that night on, Eleanor's presence in the house was undeniable. Her laughter, once the sound of joy, became something else entirely. It was as if her spirit never left the mansion. It lingered in the halls, in the rooms, and in the attic. The sounds of a child playing at night were heard by many, visitors, caretakers, and even the family who lived in the house after the Greys moved away. As time went on, the house on Hillcrest Lane was passed from family to family, but each one would eventually flee, terrified by the mysterious happenings. The child's laughter continued to echo through the halls, followed by the sounds of small feet running across the floor. It was said that sometimes at night, the rocking chair would begin to move on its own, creaking back and forth in a rhythmic, eerie motion. It became clear to anyone who spent any time there that Eleanor's spirit could not find peace. The girl who had once been full of life, whose laughter filled the mansion with joy, was now a lost soul, trapped in a world she couldn't escape. But it wasn't just the sounds that haunted those who dared to live in the house. People who spent the night in the house would often report seeing a child in the shadows, standing motionless in the corner of a room, or a small figure darting quickly down the hallway. Those brave enough to approach the attic often heard soft whispers calling their names, as though someone was trying to get their attention. One of the most chilling reports came from a young woman who had rented the house in the 1980s. She had been warned about the ghostly happenings, but like so many before her, she didn't believe. That is, until the night she decided to venture up into the attic alone. The air was thick with an unexplainable heaviness, and as she stepped closer to the rocking chair, she felt it. The sensation of being watched, of something breathing on her neck. As she turned to leave, she saw it, a small figure standing at the far end of the attic, watching her. It was Eleanor, or rather, it was her ghost. The little girl, dressed in a nightgown, her face pale, her eyes dark and hollow, stood silently in the corner. The woman ran from the house, never to return. The ghostly child is not always an evil spirit, but the fear she instills in those who encounter her is real. Eleanor's spirit is believed to be one of longing, longing for the life she was taken from, longing for her parents, longing for a home she can no longer call her own. She doesn't mean harm, but her presence is a reminder of a tragic past that refuses to be forgotten. Today, the house on Hillcrest Lane remains empty. The doors are locked, the windows boarded up. No one dares to live there anymore. But still, the sounds of children playing, the laughter of a young girl, and the gentle creaking of the rocking chair can be heard from time to time, as though Eleanor's restless spirit has never left. Perhaps some spirits, like Eleanor's, cannot find peace until they are acknowledged, until their stories are told. And as long as the house on Hillcrest Lane stands, the laughter of a little girl will continue to echo through its halls. A ghostly child, lost in time, forever caught between the past and the present, a haunting reminder that not all tragedies fade away. Until then, the house waits, and so does Eleanor. In the stillness of night, when the wind howls and the shadows dance, the sound of a little girl laughing may just be the last thing you hear before you close your eyes.